Here's Johnny.
Close your eyes.
This world is not what you think it is.
Kill the programming.
This world is not what you think it is.
You and I, and most people that talk about this, we have no like direct access to knowledge about space.
This is all being given to us by other people.
You believe in the moon landing, right?
I used to believe in the moon landing.
You don't anymore?
It's one of our greatest achievements as Americans.
Sure.
Like, you gotta pry that from my cold dead hands to make me willing to give that up.
I would tell you that one of our greatest achievements is faking the moon landing.
I could be.
I think it's an amazing achievement. I think it's an amazing achievement. This was a time of deep deception in the American world. This is a time after Operation Northwoods. This is a time after the Kennedy assassination. This is a time, I mean, this is a weird fucking shaky time in terms of propaganda. This is after Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. This is like, there was a lot of deception. Gulf of Tonkin incident. There's a lot of open deception that the American people were being subject to. And then there's this Cold War between us and Russia, this space war for superiority.
There was, we wanted it so bad we brought in Nazis.
There's a binary code, but that's missing. That stuff's missing. All the tracking data's, they can't find it. All the original footage is missing. Last time they did it was 1972. You don't think that's a little weird?
Not really.
No. Listen.
I don't think
even if
weird.
they did go to the moon. I'll say they went to the moon. It's fucking weird. Everything from 1969 is easier, cheaper, and faster to reproduce today, except the moon landing, except space travel. Everything else, phones are in your fucking pocket now, and they have more computing power than the entire cluster that they used to launch the Apollo program. The Apollo program was a fucking giant room full of computers. Your phone is significantly more powerful than that.
Yeah.
Everything else got better, except that. We thought that people were going to be going to space all the time. Boy, by 1999, we'll be flying around spaceships and people will be living on the moon. Every time they've done, like in the past, like after the moon landings, every time they did any sort of like science fiction movie, it always involved like colonies already established on the moon and on Mars and people traveling, because we thought that was going to happen. So everything progresses technologically, except...
Well, but here's what I would say to that.
Except traveling to other planets. So here's the question. Could they compartmentalize things? The people that make the rockets, what you're doing is you're making a specific part, and this guy's making another part, and you have the engineers put this thing together. Of course they could. Yeah, that's possible. Could they get enough people to shut the fuck up because it's in the best interest of national security? Of course they could. And you could probably get away with doing something like that with a few hundred people. And you could get a few hundred people of high-ranking people that have top secret clearance keep their mouth shut, especially in 1969. First of all, if they killed the president, wow. And it seems like they kind of did that. So if they did this too,
like what else did they do?
Like what other hoaxes were played on the American people?
Well, I will say, I don't even, the moon landing hoax idea it's barely even a kook take anymore. You're probably in the majority with your take on it. And the last time I talked about this publicly,
I got absolutely ripped to shreds.
I mean, it felt like 99% against. And it's going to happen again in response to this conversation.
99% against you?
Yeah.
Against your take. So most people think that we didn't go to the moon.
Seems like it's shifting drastically. Once you see that this is a lie, this is a lie, this is a lie.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that is happening. And I'm totally sympathetic to that part of it. What gets me is, well, you get the people that say, yeah, I think the Earth's flat. And that's you're just really stupid. But what I was more fascinated by the, like, 80% of people who... 80% of the flat Earth crowd, 80% of them, their take was, well, I'm not saying the Earth is flat, but I'm open to it. So I'm open to the possibility. How are you? I get it if you're just completely stupid and you got sucked into this cult thing, but what I don't get is how can you be
on the fence about the shape of the Earth?
Not everybody can be a robot polisher.
We're in the weirdest time where people are willing to believe bullshit. It's not as simple as being able to recognize bullshit. They recognize it, they have it right in front of them, and they're willing to believe it because it's more convenient to believe it. They can say something and it can be not true, but yet enough people repeat it, and then it just becomes a narrative. That's how dumb people are. You can have a fake thing and say it enough times, and enough people will jump in and be on board with it, and then it becomes a real thing. And then you don't even have to like use propaganda anymore. These morons are doing it for you. People are so stupid, feeble, weak, terrified men.
All right, my newest episode on the Joe Rogan Experience dropped yesterday, and I had a great time on the show. Second time doing the show, and then the conversation verged into the moon landing conspiracy, which has very little to do with the movie. In fact, probably nothing at all. And that's okay, actually, because I thought it was a fascinating conversation. I enjoyed it, and I have to tell you, I've been listening to the Joe Rogan's podcast for, I don't know, 10 years. And this has been one of my professional ambitions now for probably a decade, is to go on Joe Rogan's show and talk about something like that. Talk about aliens, talk about moon landing, something in that vein. The first time I did the show, we didn't get into any of that kind of stuff. And so I was actually happy. I'm like, yes, this is my great ambition, is to talk about this kind of thing on this show. So it was great. And I was the one who sort of brought it up. I brought it up as an aside in some other context. We were talking about flat Earth. Okay, so that's another thing. We were talking about flat Earth theory, which Joe's not a flat Earth guy. And then I mentioned the moon landing conspiracy theory as an aside. I thought that Joe was a moon landing believer like I am. I know he had a joke in his Netflix special recently about denying the moon landing. I wasn't sure if that reflected his actual views. And we talked about it, and it turns out that, as he explained, he doesn't outright deny the moon landing, but he is much more open to the possibility that it is a hoax than he was in the past. So I'll play a little bit of that conversation, but this went on, like I said, for like an hour. I think it's worth going and watching the whole thing. But this is about 2.5 minutes of that exchange. Here it is.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
You're moon landing. You're not you believe in the moon landing, right?
I used to believe in the moon landing.
You don't anymore?
I had a joke in my act about it, that before COVID, I would have told you vaccines are the most important invention in human history. And after COVID, I'm like, I don't think we went to the moon.
Yeah, I know that was in your, but
Yeah.
you actually think that?
I think there is a less than zero possibility that we did not go to the moon.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Why do you think we went to the moon?
Because it's exactly what you just said about, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the main thing is what you just said about the Earth. The vastness of the conspiracy that would be required to fake that, it's so vast that it's a lot more incredible to believe that we faked it than to believe that we just went. And going to the moon, it's a massive achievement, but I think the greatest human achievement of all time. But even so, to fake it would be even more massive, because not only would you need all of these space agencies and all the different whatever people in American institutions to be colluding, but you'd also need foreign governments, including adversarial foreign governments, who at this point certainly would know we faked it, and for some reason haven't blown the lid on it. So they're letting us like take this achievement that they know. Like, why haven't the Russians come out and said
all those things you're saying are true?
Right.
I don't argue with any of the things you're saying, but one of the things that I think you have to consider was, if it's not possible for human beings to safely go through the Van Allen radiation belts and out into deep space without much protection and face the temperatures that are on the surface of the moon, which get up to 250 degrees and 250 degrees below zero in the shadows. There's no environment there. It's hostile beyond belief. Micrometeorites are flying into the moon all the time. They're flying through space all the time. We've never had a single biological organism go out into deep space, past the Van Allen radiation belts, and then come back to Earth and come back alive, except human beings during the Apollo missions.
Saying that it was a hoax is an assertion of it's not you're not just denying an event, you're asserting a whole other event that you say happened instead. And there is evidence that we went to the moon. Now, someone who's a skeptic might say it's not enough evidence or it's not good evidence. There's like evidence. There's eyewitness. There's people that went and came back and told us. There's footage. There's a lot. Okay. There is evidence.
Okay.
But there's no evidence of the hoax. Like, no one has come and said, here's my affirmative evidence that this hoax happened.